So let's say that we want to just bring in a cube, but now we want to smooth this cube, so we want to add a subdivision surface to it. So to do that, we can come up here again to our command groups and we can click on this subdivision surface. You can see that it's in the object manager, and right now it's at the same level as our cube and nothing is really happening. So with these green generators like this, and if you open this up, you'll see that there's some other generators here that'll work with splines. With these, you want to take your geometry and drag it underneath this, and you can see when my arrow changes to a down arrow, and so I'll just drag it and you can see that now it's indented underneath the subdivision surface. You can also see that now we get the effect of that subdivision surface generator. If I select the subdivision surface, I can change the amount of subdivision that's happening in the editor and also in the renderer. I can also change the subdivision type as well. Now whenever we have a generator like this working on a piece of geometry or on a spline, you can always turn off the effect of that generator by clicking the little green check. So now we still have the parenting relationship set up, but now we're not seeing the effect of that particular generator. We can turn that back on just like that. Let's turn off the visibility of this and look at some splines. To do that, we can use these little street light kind of things here. So if I hit this one, it's going to turn it green, which means it's visible. If I click it again, it's going to turn it red, which means it's invisible. Click it again and it's default. So I'm just going to turn this off. Also, if you're at default and you want to go back the other way, you can, I think it's shift, and you can go back. So now let's bring in some splines, and we can do the same thing with the splines that we did with the geometry. We can bring in some existing shapes. So let's bring in a circle. So we have this circle in our scene. Let's duplicate the circle, and to duplicate an object, all we have to do is control drag it, either in the object manager or in our 3D view. So I'll just hit control and drag this out, and I'll create another one over here. So now we've got these three circles that exist here. Let's say we want to create some geometry that basically is a loft between these. So again, we're going to come up here and under subdivision surface, we're going to choose this loft. Now the loft is going to work the same way. We want to take all of our splines and drop them underneath the loft. So let's just take them as they are and drop them under the loft. So now we're getting some geometry, but it's not exactly what we want. When we're lofting these splines together, the order is really, really important. So you can see here that we're kind of going back and forth. So what we want to do is kind of clean up the order so that it goes from one to the other. So here we've got this spline, which we can move in the loft updates. This one over here, and then this one over here. And this is a very flexible workflow because these are still primitive splines. We could go in and do some modifications to these. I could make these into rings just by taking all of these, and now I've got a tube. I can go in and rotate that. You can see that we've got a hollow tube there. And so we can still go in under the, on the base objects here and make modifications in addition to going into the loft itself and making modifications there. You can also go into caps and you can say, well, I want to have a fillet cap on both ends, and what that will do is it'll create a little bit of a bevel around the cap part of this, and you can change the radius of this. You can give it a few more steps, and you could change the type of fillet that you have there. If we turn off shading, you get something like that, which is kind of cool. Just being generated from splines that we haven't even converted or made them editable, and we've dropped them inside this loft. So you can see here where the hierarchy becomes very, very important. In the same way, if we select let's select a cube here, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and let's move this off to the side. Let's also make sure that we've got plenty of segments here. And now let's say I want to use a deformer on this. So let's say I want to use a bend deformer. Now the deformers are going to be a little bit different in that we want the deformer to be a child of the object instead of the other way around. So we'll take the bend deformer and drop it inside the cube. Now right now the bend deformer is right over here. If we choose that and say fit to parent, it'll fit it right on top of the parent, which is really, really nice. Then we can take that deformer and we can start to bend our object. And you can see still I'm only using a primitive object. Now you can start to see where the resolution comes in. As we start to reduce this, you can see we don't have a lot of geometry in there to be able to bend. And so having more geometry will create a nice smooth bend. But still, we can go in, modify our primitive. We're not working with anything that's baked down. So you do have the ability to create some very nice kind of setups here that you can go back in and modify as you want, even down to the base splines and the base geometry that you're working with. So we'll talk about each thing as we go through it, but I just wanted to kind of give you a taste of the fact that in this object manager, the hierarchy is going to be very important as we start to kind of create our geometry using different kinds of generators. So when we go in and create something that's symmetrical, we'll use a symmetry object here, generator. We'll use, when we start to combine splines, we'll use another type of generator. And so there's lots of different nodes that we can drop in here, and the parenting relationship is what's going to determine how that ends up looking in our 3D view. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is kind of take a little bit of a look at our overall project. So we'll kind of take a look at the robot that we're going to be creating, talk about some of the things that we're going to be using to build that up, and then we'll go in and